Put the same instruction in 4 places inside Claude Code and you can get 4 different systems. In CLAUDE.md, it becomes always-on project context. In a skill, it becomes a procedure loaded when needed. In a hook, it becomes an event-driven action or guardrail. In a subagent, it becomes isolated delegated work. Most bad Claude Code setups are not missing instructions. They are putting the right instruction in the wrong control layer. Start with CLAUDE.md. The root CLAUDE.md file loads at the beginning of the session and stays in context. Anthropic recommends it for facts Claude should know throughout the work. Build commands, directory layout, coding conventions, monorepo structure, and team norms. Think of it as the map on the wall. Run PNPM test before completion can belong there as a project expectation. The API lives under services/gateway belongs there. Migrations are append-only may belong there or in a path-scoped rule, but a 40-step deployment runbook should not. Every always-on line consumes attention whether the current task needs it or not. As teams append more policies, the file becomes an attic of old instructions. Anthropic's current guidance recommends keeping the root file concise, giving it an owner, and moving procedures into on-demand mechanisms. That brings us to skills. A skill is a folder containing a skill.md file and optional scripts or resources. At session start, Claude sees the skill's name and description. The full procedure loads only when the skill is invoked or matched to the task. Think of a skill as a playbook taken from the shelf. A release skill can inspect the working tree, run tests, verify the change log, build artifacts, and prepare a release summary. A security review skill can define the evidence to collect and the order of checks. A database migration skill can require backup verification and rollback instructions. The procedure is available when relevant without occupying every coding session, but a skill is still guidance interpreted by a model. If something absolutely must happen every time, use a hook. Hooks fire on lifecycle events such as session start, a tool call, or a file edit. Some hook types execute a command or call an endpoint deterministically. A pre-tool hook can inspect an operation and block it. A post-edit hook can run a formatter. A pre-compaction hook can back up session state. Think of a hook as the circuit breaker. Please remember not to edit generated files as a prompted preference. Reject write operations targeting the generated directory is an enforced boundary. Those are not equivalent. Anthropic explicitly warns that a natural language never do this rule is not a complete guardrail. Long sessions, ambiguity, or hostile content can reduce instruction adherence. Real enforcement belongs in permissions, managed settings, or deterministic hooks. Then we have subagents. A subagent runs a delegated task in its own context window. The main session provides a prompt, the subagent performs the investigation, and the final result returns to the parent without dumping every intermediate step into the main context. Think of a subagent as a specialist sent into another room. Deep log analysis, dependency auditing, repository research, or an isolated code review can fit well. The subagent can hold noisy intermediate evidence while the parent retains the central plan. But do not create a subagent just to execute a checklist you want to watch and steer. That is usually a skill. Use isolation when the side task would clutter the main context or can proceed independently. Now apply all 4 layers to one repository. The root CLAUDE.md says how to build the project where packages live, which commands are authoritative, and what completion means. A release skill contains the ordered release procedure and its verification checklist. A hook blocks edits to generated lock records and automatically runs the formatter after supported source changes. A dependency audit subagent scans manifests and advisories, then returns a concise risk report to the main task. Each instruction now has the correct loading behavior and authority. This also makes the system faster. The root context stays small. Large procedures load only when used. Deterministic automation runs outside the conversational reasoning path. Isolated investigations return summaries instead of filling the parent with thousands of tokens. There are 4 common failure modes. Failure 1, the giant CLAUDE.md. Every team adds a paragraph, nobody removes anything, and critical rules drown among irrelevant history. Failure 2. The magical skill a team assumes a skill is guaranteed enforcement, but a model invoked procedure is not the same as a permission boundary. Failure 3. The invisible hook. A script changes files or blocks commands without clear messages, so developers cannot understand the control path. Hooks should be narrow, observable, and versioned. Failure 4. The subagent maze. Work is delegated through layers until the main task receives summaries with no evidence trail. Isolation should reduce noise, not erase accountability. Security matters because skills and hooks can include scripts. A third-party skill is not merely a paragraph of advice. It can direct tool use, load resources, or execute code through the workflow. Review it like code, pin its source, inspect its scripts. Limit permissions. Do not install a collection because a star count feels trustworthy. Here's the migration recipe for an overloaded setup. Open the root CLAUDE.md and classify every line. If it is a stable project fact needed in most sessions, keep it. If it applies only to selected paths, move it to a scoped rule or nearby project file. If it is an ordered procedure, make it a skill. If it must happen reliably on an event, make it a hook or permission. If it is a noisy side investigation, make it a subagent. Then delete duplication. One policy should have one owner. A hook can enforce the boundary while the root file briefly explains why it exists, but 3 conflicting copies of the same rule create drift. Claude Code does not need the most instructions. It needs the smallest clear control plane. CLAUDE.md is the map. Skills are the playbooks. Hooks are the circuit breakers. Subagents are the specialists. Put each instruction where its loading cost, authority, and isolation match the job. That is how a folder of prompts becomes a production workflow instead of a very expensive suggestion box.